What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking a deep look at the Sleeper Agent field upgrade in Black Ops 6. Since the last time I covered this was back in the beta, and some things have changed, and also back in the beta, we didn't have access to custom games, so I couldn't do all of the detailed testing that I'm going to be sharing today. So we're first going to start this off with the characteristics of Sleeper Agent, exactly how it works and what it looks like. Then I'm going to be sharing a bunch of tips for using Sleeper Agents, and then finally, I wanted to share a handful of tips for how to counter or detect Sleeper Agent players. So diving into the basics here, Sleeper Agent is the slowest charging field upgrade in the game at 187 seconds. And when Gearhead was working, you could cut that down to 131 milliseconds. That's still broken though in the game's current state. I'm sure they'll get on top of that eventually. But this means in many games, you're only going to get Sleeper Agent once or twice. And that largely just depends on the game mode that you're playing. Then when it comes to the active duration, it will last for a full 30 seconds, which is a fairly long time in Call of Duty terms. However, unlike the beta, getting kills with this will not extend the timer. It's just a flat 30 seconds, or of course, if you die, it will end that duration. As for what this does, well, effectively, it makes it appear as though you're on the enemy team for the enemy players. So as far as they're concerned, you look a lot like a teammate, and therefore they likely won't shoot you, or at the very least, they'll hesitate before shooting at you, and that will often give you enough time to get the kill on them. Now, some specifics when it comes to this. This will actually change your character model the moment it activates, so you'll appear as a character that would be on the enemy's faction rather than your own faction. You'll also start showing up on their minimap as a blue arrow, just like a teammate would. Your name tag also turns blue, and you get the blue dot above your head rather than a red dot. However, interestingly, when they're not looking basically directly at you, when they're looking kind of off to the side, your name will appear as a normal teammate. So they'll be able to read your name, it'll show up as blue, you'll have the blue dot. But when they aim really close to you, your name will suddenly start to be scrambled. And that's something that will absolutely give you away. If enemies start looking in your direction, they'll see like, hey, his name tag's doing something crazy. And if they know how Sleeper Agent works, or if they've seen this video now, they will know what's going on and they will shoot and kill you. A couple other characteristics to point out here, you will still have enemy level footsteps when Sleeper Agent is active. So just in case you weren't aware, teammates actually have slightly quieter footsteps than enemies in Black Ops 6. But Sleeper Agent players will still sound like an enemy player. You can also still be pinged as if you're an enemy. And if you're playing against controller players, aim assist will still work completely normally against you. So sometimes if they're sweeping their aim across you, they can feel that you're an enemy player, and that can also reveal your position. Now, one of the biggest keys to point out here with Sleeper Agent is if you fire an unsuppressed gun, you will show up on the enemy's minimap now as a red dot rather than a blue arrow, so that can reveal your position. And your name tag will turn red again for 3 seconds, so that can really easily reveal your position to enemy players. It is worth noting your character model doesn't suddenly switch back the moment you fire an unsuppressed weapon. It will remain the same as one of their teammates. But with a red name tag and a red dot on the minimap, usually that's going to get you killed. Now, in saying that, if you fire a suppressed weapon, then this doesn't happen. You still have that blue name tag above your head for enemy players, and you will still be showing as a blue arrow on the minimap. So suppressors are absolutely key when it comes to Sleeper Agent. Then it's also worth noting, if you're not using the Ghost perk, or you have Ghost but you're not moving and therefore it's not active, if the enemy has a Scout Pulse or UAV in the air, you will still show up on the minimap as a red dot rather than a blue arrow, so that can give your position away, although your name tag will still be blue throughout the duration of this. And it's the same thing with the HARP, although Ghost doesn't counter the HARP, so you will show up on the minimap as an enemy. But again, your name tag will at least remain blue for the enemy players, so they will have to be paying attention to their minimap. Another thing to point out is AI targeting systems will still target you when you have Sleeper Agent active, unless of course you're using Cold-Blooded to counter that. So things like sentry turrets or attack choppers, for instance, they will still target you. Sleeper Agent doesn't protect you from those. And you will also still trigger any sort of equipment like blast traps, proximity mines, shock sticks. All of these things will still be triggered. And the spotter scope still works against you. Although, again, your name tag will remain blue if you get spotted by a spotter scope, but you will be revealed with that red outline. And with those things out of the way, I do want to go over the 3 different states that you'll see on the bottom right as your Sleeper Agent is active. You might notice that it tells you that you're hidden, tracked, or revealed. And with this, when it says you're hidden, this means everything's working as expected here. You're showing up as a teammate for all of the enemies that can currently see you. Your name tag will be blue, you'll have the blue dot, you'll show as a blue arrow on their minimap. But if they look directly at you, your name will be scrambled, but it'll still show you as hidden. So it's not like you're 100% hidden here, but you're effectively hidden. This is the best state to be in when Sleeper Agent is active. Next up, we have the tracked state, and this is the one that was the most confusing to me until I did the testing here. Tracked will show up when you get shot by an enemy player. However, your name is still going to be blue for them, and you're still showing up as a blue arrow on the minimap. So it's not like this is fully revealing you as a red player, as an enemy for sure. It just shows somebody has shot you, so perhaps they know what's going on here and you might want to be on slightly higher alert. Additionally, when the enemy is using the counter perk to Sleeper Agent, which is Vigilance, if you're in their line of sight, this tracked indicator will appear on your screen. So this could also just be indicating that there is somebody with the counter perk currently looking at you, and therefore you want to be on higher alert as well. But generally speaking, when that tracked icon appears, it's not a huge concern because you're not fully revealed to the enemy players. The concerning bit is when you see revealed pop up. And this will show up when you fire an unsuppressed weapon, which you really shouldn't be doing if you can avoid it while using Sleeper Agent. It is worth noting, if you show up on an enemy UAV, Scout Pulse, or HARP, the revealed icon doesn't appear, which is interesting. I think it should appear when that happens, but it doesn't. So sometimes you are actually revealed, at least on the minimap to enemy players, but it doesn't give you any indication of that. But essentially, when revealed appears, this means that for all enemy players, they can see that red name tag above your head. And as a result, in that moment, Sleeper Agent is disabled for you, aside from the fact that for the enemy players, you will still be appearing as a friendly character model, but with a red name tag above their head. And that'll wrap it up for the different states that you're in while using Sleeper Agent, as well as a bunch of the testing that I did. Now let's talk about some tips if you're going to be using Sleeper Agent. And the number one tip is if you're using Sleeper Agent, you should 100% be using the Ghost perk as well as a suppressor. That's totally non-negotiable for me. If you're firing an unsuppressed weapon, you're completely wasting Sleeper Agent. It's totally pointless to use, unless you're going melee only. That is another tip I've got. Melee is great when using Sleeper Agent. And if you are working on melee camos, for instance, you should absolutely be using this field upgrade because it's going to be helping you a ton. You can go on some really nice sprees. On top of that, when it comes to perks, I would say using Cold-Blooded and Ninja, these would be very helpful as well because you won't be targeted by AI systems. And like I said, your footsteps won't sound friendly to enemy players when Sleeper Agent's active. So just having Ninja on there gets rid of that problem. But with these ones, I would say they're much less necessary than Ghost and a suppressed weapon. You can generally get away with not having these and you'll do just fine. Another big tip for using this is your actual behavior. One big thing is you want to avoid moving with teammates when this is active. Because if you're standing side by side with a teammate and you're not shooting at them, then that's a pretty dead giveaway that you're being suspicious. Additionally, with your behavior, you want to try to avoid running head-on toward enemy players. I know that's easier said than done, and obviously you have to close the gap and get toward the enemies. But of course, if you're running in the opposite direction from what they would expect, that could also make you suspicious. So usually, flanking is what you want to be doing when Sleeper Agent is active. And sometimes you may even want to try to get a flank secretly before even activating Sleeper Agent, and then try to approach the enemies from behind or from the side instead of just running straight at them. Although I will say, if you are running straight at them and into a gunfight, it's not like it's completely useless. Typically, you'll at least make them hesitate because you'll appear as a teammate initially, and that tiny bit of hesitation is often all you need to easily win that gunfight. And then one final tip I've got for you guys while Sleeper Agent is active is constantly stay on the move. You don't want to stand still, even if you think you're being sneaky and hidden and you're right next to some enemy players. If you give them long enough to look at you, that'll give them plenty of time to notice that scrambled name tag as they aim at you, and then they'll know that you aren't actually friendly. But if you're moving constantly and they're just catching little glimpses of you as you're sliding and jumping around like crazy, then it's less likely they'll notice that scrambled name tag. So combining all those tips together, that will allow you to get the most out of this field upgrade. Now let's talk about counterplay. I'm sure a lot of you guys are here to know how to counter the Sleeper Agent. And the first big tip for counterplay is listening to the announcer. When an enemy player activates Sleeper Agent, there will be an announcement that'll be saying something like, "There's a spy in our midst," or something along those lines.
Net call, Sleeper Agent detected.
If you hear something like that, now you want to be on high alert, looking out for a suspicious looking teammate. Now, if you missed that announcement, you can also look at the kill feed. You might notice in the kill feed, the enemy's name tag will be redacted. You'll see a big black bar instead of a name tag. That means there is a Sleeper Agent active on the enemy team and killing your teammates. And I would say that's the first biggest step to countering Sleeper Agent, is knowing that there is currently one active on the enemy team. Next up for counters, obviously we have the counter perks, but realistically in an in-game scenario, unless you already have these perks on your setup, it's not like you can change them mid-life if you realize there's now a Sleeper Agent on the map. But I just wanted to point out, if you're using Vigilance, this is essentially a full counter. You will see the red name tag above their head rather than a blue one. They will also not be showing on your minimap as a blue arrow. You'll show up normally as if an enemy would. And really, the only thing that may throw them off, but probably won't, is the fact that you will still appear as a friendly character model to them. However, most people won't even notice that. They'll just see a red name tag or a red dot, and they'll kill you. So Vigilance is the main counter. However, the Tracker perk is a pretty solid counter as well, because when you aim at them, it will auto-ping them, and they will have that red diamond above their head that will follow them, not only for you, but also for your teammates. And then on top of that with Tracker, their footsteps will still be highlighted on the ground even when Sleeper Agent's active, so that's also something that could potentially counter them. But outside of those things where, like I said, it's not like you can just change your perks mid-life, if you know a Sleeper Agent is active on the enemy team, the biggest you want to keep an eye out for is a scrambled name tag. If you see a name tag that looks even slightly suspicious, like it's moving in any way, shoot that player right away. On top of that, watch out for quote-unquote teammates that are running in the opposite direction from what you would expect your teammate to be running in. And I know we've all experienced actual teammates running in what appears to be the opposite direction, but this is just an extra sign that that person may be suspicious. And on that note, don't hesitate to shoot at teammates when you know there's a Sleeper Agent active. Unless you're playing hardcore, of course, it's fine to just pop a bullet into your teammate, see if you get a hit marker, and if you don't, then he's clear. If you do, then he's actually an enemy. Similarly, if you're a controller player and you feel like you get a little bit of an aim assist pull on a teammate, that can also be an indicator that that's somebody you should be shooting at. And finally, a big thing to be aware of when there's an enemy Sleeper Agent out there is sound. If you hear what sounds like enemy footsteps and not teammate footsteps, then it's likely an enemy. Additionally, and I would say more importantly here, be extra wary of suppressed fire when you hear it if you know there's a Sleeper Agent on the map. Because like we saw, if they're firing an unsuppressed gun, then they're just going to show up on the radar anyway. But a good Sleeper Agent player will be using a suppressor, and therefore, if you hear somebody shooting a suppressor, be extra suspicious of that particular player, even if it appears to be a teammate at first glance. And there we go. That's pretty much it. That wraps it up for Sleeper Agent, how it works, how to use it effectively, and how to counter it effectively. And I just wanted to share my final thoughts on this because I wasn't a fan of this field upgrade at all in the beta. I felt it was too powerful and too jarring and frustrating to deal with. But I've got to say, after the changes they made from the beta, I do think Sleeper Agent is in a much better state, and I honestly don't really have that much of an issue with it. It's easier to detect now, it doesn't last for nearly as long, and the charge time is so slow that you're not really going to run into it on a super regular basis, at least in my experience. Now, of course, these are just my opinions, and I'd love to know what you guys think about Sleeper Agent in those comments down below. Do you guys like that this field upgrade's in the game and how it's currently balanced, or not? Do you guys think it needs a buff or a nerf, or do you just want it eliminated from the game entirely? If you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.